We have socks.
I just give me socks.
I gave Jennifer a pair too. I saw her by the car.
Does Will have a pair? Does Will have a pair?
Oh, no.
There.
There you go. Black one.
All right.
So you guys-
All right. Sounds good.
Good afternoon. Notice of a public meeting of the City Commission of the City of Brownsville. Pursuant to Chapter 551, Title 5 of the Texas Government Code, the Texas Open Meetings Act, notice is hereby given that the City Commission of the City of Brownsville, Texas, in accordance with Article 5, Section 12 of the Charter of said city, will convene a regular meeting on November the 1st at 5 p.m. in the City Commission chambers located on the second floor of the Brownsville City Hall, Old Federal Building located at 1001 East Elizabeth Street. Members of the public who submitted a public comment form will be permitted to offer public comments as provided by the agenda and as permitted by the presiding officer during the meeting. A recording of the meeting will be made and will be available to the public in accordance with the Open Meetings Act. Mayor, it is 5:02. You may call the meeting to order. Next item, invocation.
Welcome. Let's all stand as we pray, and let's remain standing afterwards for the pledge. So, Father God, we thank you once again for this nation. Lord, for the responsibility that you entrust each one of us as citizens. And Lord, we ask you to lead and guide and anoint every voter to follow your direction concerning this election. Give us the leaders that will be best in your way of thinking, those that represent us in Washington, in Austin, and right here in Brownsville. Lead and guide our mayor and our city commissioners here today and everybody that's presenting anything. Lord, for the very best for the city of Brownsville, help us to look to you in every decision. We thank you for all of these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. And now we'll take a short moment of silence where we can all add our prayers to what has already been spoken. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor.
Thank you.
Now we'll go to the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag.
Texas. State.
Next item, we have proclamations. First proclamation is proclamation recognizing police officer Sigifredo Martinez, invitation to umpire and service as an umpire at the 2022 Junior Division Little League Softball World Series in Kirkland, Washington.
Officer, welcome. This is a proclamation of the City Commission of Brownsville, Texas, recognizing Officer Sigifredo Martinez. Whereas on July 28th, 2022, Officer Sigifredo Martinez was invited to umpire at the 2022 Junior Division Little League Softball World Series in Kirkland, Washington. 12 umpires from all over the United States were invited, with 10 teams participating at this year's World Series. International teams from Canada, Asian Pacific, and Europe were in attendance during the games. And whereas Officer Martinez has been umpiring Little League games for 13 years, he has umpired at 3 World Series, which includes 2014, 2018, and the present 2022 in Kirkland, Washington. And whereas Officer Martinez represents the city of Brownsville, Texas, by being a positive influence, helping mentor the youth in our community. And whereas Officer Martinez has been employed by the Brownsville Police Department for 29 years, protecting and serving the citizens. And whereas the City of Brownsville, Brownsville Police Department, and the citizens of Brownsville are grateful to Officer Martinez for his service as both a police officer and mentor in our community. Now therefore, we the members of the City Commission of the City of Brownsville, Texas, by the virtue of the authority vested by the charter of said city, and behalf of all of our citizens, do hereby recognize Officer Martinez for his achievement and continuous support for our community. Done on this first day of November, 2022. Officer, thank you so much. If you'd like to say a few words, the podium is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, City Commissioners. Thank you, City of Bronzeville. Thank you, West Bronzeville Little League. And I'll also throw some props to the Los Fresnos Little League, because that is where I started. Again, I've been doing this for 13 years. I'm 53 years old, so I figured I got maybe like 5 more years to go. But I love it. I love doing it. I love giving back to the communities. I love giving back to other communities around the nation. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, we have a proclamation designating November 13 to 19, 2022 as International Fraud Awareness Week in the city of Brownsville.
Is there someone here? Good. On up. Come. This is the proclamation of the City Commission of Brownsville, Texas, designating November 13th to the 19th, 2022 as International Fraud Awareness Week in the city of Brownsville. Whereas this year marks the observance of International Fraud Awareness Week, which is set aside to raise awareness about the impact of fraud upon our society, and whereas the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners, an organization dedicated to the mission of reducing the incidence of fraud worldwide, estimates that a typical organization loses 5% of its revenue each year to fraud. And whereas local, state, and federal governments are frequent targets of fraud, and instances of fraud in local government unambiguously undermine the good work and reputation of all local employees who complete their assigned duties with integrity and honesty, and decreases confidence in public officials. And whereas fraud against the city of Brownsville is a burden borne by its citizens and businesses in the form of increased costs, loss of public revenue and resources, and increased expenses associated with the investigation, prosecution, and eventual incarceration of individuals who commit fraud. And whereas tips received from employees are consistently the greatest source by which frauds are detected, and increasing employee awareness of fraud, including the magnitude of the problem, and educating employees about fraud prevention, detection, and reporting techniques is critical for reducing the incidence of fraud against and within the city of Brownsville. Now, therefore, we, the members of the City Commission of the City of Brownsville, by virtue of the authority vested by the charter of said city, do hereby designate November 13th to the 19th, 2022, as International Fraud Awareness Week in the city of Brownsville, Texas. Done on this first day of November, 2022, signed by the mayor and the City Commission.
More. Thank you. Thank you all. If anybody would like to say anything, please go ahead.
Hello, my name is Melissa Frausto, and I just want to say thank you for taking the stance against fraud. As the city together and collectively, we can help make a difference. Thank you.
Thanks.
Next item, we have public comment period. We have one public comment, Lawrence Fernandez.
I don't see him here. Is he online? That's Gene.
Next item, we have work sessions, capital improvement street program, 5-year work plan, cross-section presentation.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Commissioners. Today, we're going to be presenting, as requested, the proposed cross-sections for our 5-year work plan program for our CIP streets that will be paved. The proposed streets that we'll be discussing today is going to be Old Alice, 14th Street, and Coffeeport, Stagecoach, Wild Rose, and Old Highway 77. This is for the design of these streets at this time. When in consideration for these cross-sections that you'll be seeing today, we did take into consideration our thoroughfare plan, our sidewalk and trails master plan, and different traffic studies that we completed in these thoroughfares. Some of the challenges that we saw is obviously our limited right-of-ways. We do have some utility conflicts and some existing landscape features that we'll have to work around of. So the cross-sections that you see is what we're intending to use. We might have some variations throughout the right-of-way as we encounter these limitations. Here with us today, we're going to have Yolanda de la Torre, who's one of our new EITs, be presenting the first 3 streets, and then Alejandro will follow with the following 3.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and Commissioners. As Loro mentioned, my name is Yolanda de la Torre. I am an engineer in training for the Engineering and Public Works Department. To get started, I will go ahead and begin with Old Alice Road. So the limits for this proposed reconstruction are from Frontage Road to Ruben Torres Boulevard with an approximate length of 4,900 linear foot or 0.93 miles. The right-of-way along this road varies, and our proposed cross-sections will vary as well. The sidewalks will be consistent throughout, showing a 5-foot on one side of the right-of-way and a 10-foot shared path along the other side. Thank you. So our first cross-section shows a 32-foot right-of-way with a proposed 16-foot back-to-back. This shows a proposed one-way 11-foot lane. This is where it enters at frontage. So if you're familiar with the area, that is an existing one lane. So this will be traveling towards Ruben Torres Boulevard. It will follow the typical sidewalk layout. Our next cross-section is a 60-foot right-of-way with a proposed 40-foot back-to-back. This will include 3 12-foot lanes, 2 travel lanes, and 1 middle lane for turning. And it will follow the typical sidewalk layout. The next cross-section is also a 60-foot right-of-way. In this case, we're using a 32 back-to-back with 2 14-foot lanes and the typical sidewalk layout. Our last cross-section is similar to cross-section 2, where we have a 60-foot right-of-way, and we're proposing the 40-foot back-to-back with 3 12-foot lanes, 2 travel lanes, and the middle for turning. And it will also follow our typical sidewalk layout. Do you have any questions for Old Alice Road?
These are all proposals. Is there anything, when are you going to decide the final version?
Well, as Dodo mentioned, we have to see where our utility conflicts will be. So once we have all of our surveying with utilities, we can propose more of a final product.
The only thing that we may adjust is going to be the sidewalks as we meander through fire hydrants. Some will try to relocate depending on what utility repairs we're doing. For the most part, we are trying to maintain these cross sections throughout the entire thoroughfare as being proposed, or as closely as we can to it.
And assuming that everything is arranged and the final plan is in place, when do you guesstimate building would begin?
Okay, on the construction for these projects, we have various timelines, since this is part of our 5-year CIP. For Old Alice, this construction is not programmed till 27, 28 cycle year. For 14th Street, it's the year 24, 25 budget year. For Coffee Road, it's 25 through 27. We're going through multiple budget years on that one because of the size of the project. On Stagecoach, Wild Rose, and Old Highway 77, we're looking to begin at the later part of this year and continue throughout 2024.
Thank you.
The last part again, so 14th Street, 24, 25, Old Alice, 27, 28, and then Old 77 and Stagecoach are when?
Stagecoach, Wild Rose, and Old Highway 77 are programmed to begin with the end of 2023 and the early 2024 budget year.
You think it'll be completed within a year?
No,
or
that's when
they'll
we
just-
begin
they'll start?
construction.
Thank you.
We'll come back to you once we're ready to begin construction, and we'll give you timelines once we award those contracts.
How long does construction of that magnitude take, more or less?
It depends which project we're looking at, but to give you an idea, like Old Highway 77, Coffee Port, 14th Street, the larger ones, you're probably looking in the neighborhood, the way things are right now, anywhere between, for quick 10 months to about 18 months.
Wow. But this is just the engineering.
Right
work.
now, we're only on design.
Yes.
Correct. You all requested that we come and present cross-sections of what we would be proposing on these streets, and that's what we're here for today, to discuss any changes or modifications that you all feel would be needed for these right-of-ways.
So the dates that you proposed as like when they start, that would be construction or the completion or the engineering work?
That's the beginning of construction. Yes. Right now, the design has been awarded for all of these, so we will be completing the design. And the intent is, as funding becomes available, we begin the construction. That's why it's part of our 5-year work plan.
So 2 more years of phone calls, Commissioner Caldas, for Highway 77.
If there are no more questions for Old Alice, I'll go ahead and move on to our next street, which is 14th Street. So our limits for 14th Street are from Southmost Boulevard to International Boulevard. We have a total length of approximately 4,100 linear feet and 0.8, which is 0.8 miles. The right-of-way in this portion is consistent throughout the full length, and our proposed cross-section will also be consistent through the full length. So we currently have a 100-foot right-of-way, and we're proposing a 40-foot back-to-back. And we're proposing 3 12-foot lanes, 2 for traveling both ways and 1 turning lane. We'll be following the typical sidewalk layout, which is a 5-foot sidewalk on one side of the road and a 10-foot shared path on the other side. Do you have any questions for 14th Street?
Yeah, I do. So your diagram says bicycle lane, but you said shared use path. Is it an off-the-road path?
That's off-road.
Okay.
It's a sidewalk. And as you all know, on 14th Street currently, we have 4 travel lanes. And the reason we're reducing it to 3 lanes is that we feel it'll be more efficient to have a center lane for traffic to be turning versus either way they would block one of the lanes to be turning. And this would reduce our costs to hopefully build it sooner.
If I recall correctly also, Dodo, you mentioned last time that this was presented, something about trailers parking on the side.
Correct. As we evaluate the right-of-way and have the final survey for this property, we'll look into those considerations in the current areas where they have that happening already. If you can see on these right now, we don't have the oversized shoulders, but since we do have that large right-of-way, we do have that ability to make those accommodations. Once we complete that, we'll look into those areas individually to see what we can and cannot do.
That's excellent. I know several cyclists through the years who have been hit on International. That will intersect with the Southmost Nature Trail there by Porter, or is it on the
No,
other side of the
It's
street?
on, yeah, I don't think the trail comes all the way down to 14th yet.
Okay.
Okay, if there are no more questions for 14th, I'll move on to our next street. And this will be Coffee Road. So our limits are from Ruben Torres Boulevard all the way to Old Port Isabel Road. The length is of approximately 10,000 linear feet or 1.9 miles. The proposed cross-section varies throughout the full length and will have a typical sidewalk layout of 5 foot on one side and a 10-foot shared path on the other. So this is our first cross-section for Coffee Road. And this has a 72-foot right-of-way. We're proposing a 34-foot edge of pavement to edge of pavement or 38 back-to-back. 2 travel lanes, 2 11-foot travel lanes, and 1 12-foot turning lane. And we're following the typical sidewalk layout. Our next cross section is to be used from Havenwood Boulevard, more or less, to its approach to OPI Road. This is a 72-foot right-of-way, and we're proposing a 48 back-to-back or 44 edge of pavement to edge of pavement, and we have 4 11-foot travel lanes. And we're also including the typical sidewalk layout. Do you have any questions on the cross sections?
So basically, the number of lanes would stay as it is right now, with there being more lanes closer to the traffic lights, correct?
Yes, correct. And I want to go into our last layout for Coffee Road. So we are proposing to include a concrete median at the hike and bike trail crossing behind the HEB. So this is what we're proposing. Basically, this layout, what it does is it guides the pedestrian to look towards the opposite direction before crossing the road. So hopefully that will help with having pedestrians look before crossing into the median. Do you have any questions?
I'm really glad to see this. I'm just sad that it's going to take so long to get there because it's definitely needed. And one of the things that I hear about the most is the turning lane onto Paderes. Anytime it rains, it just completely dissolves and people are very upset about that. So I'm glad to see this finally being engineered and properly.
Our turning lanes is what we're really focusing on, which is the green areas that you see. As we get to the intersections, the approaches, obviously the increased traffic has definitely changed the way we look at these intersections. I'll have Alejandro continue with the remaining cross sections.
Good evening, Honorary Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Alejandro Gutierrez. I am as well an EIT engineer here at the City of Brownsville Engineering and Public Works Department, and I shall continue with Stagecoach. So Stagecoach is a road that'll span approximately 2,300 linear feet between East Morrison Road and East Alton Glore Boulevard. Throughout the road, we will have varying right-of-way between 70 feet and 90 feet. And we will also be proposing the typical sidewalk layout, 5 feet of sidewalk on one side and a 10-foot shared use on the other. So going to the first cross typical section, these are for the parts of the roadway that are connecting to East Morrison Road and East Alton Glore Boulevard. We have a 38 back-to-back, 2 11-foot travel lanes, as well as 1 12-foot left turn lane. And then we're also including the typical sidewalk layouts. And then the proposed roadway in between the intersections, we have a 38-foot back-to-back, 2 12-foot travel lanes with 2 5-foot shoulders on both sides, as well as we're including the typical sidewalk layouts. If you have any questions for Stagecoach.
I have a question on Stagecoach, because this is mostly residential area and this is a straight shot. If we're seeing incidents of speeding, and I know we see it in the other section of Stagecoach, what about speed bumps for some of these areas?
On this particular streets, what we would probably consider would be more valley gutters. We really don't want to put speed humps on our collectors, but we have been looking heavily at alternate speed calming devices. We've used the speed limit signs throughout the city that you all have seen. We've used flashing signs for our speed limit signs. So we're definitely looking at those options when we're looking at these areas.
Very
That's
good.
part of the reason you can see the lane reduction and not just leaving it a wide open corridor as well.
Okay, thank you.
Moving along to our next street, we have Wild Rose. This road spans approximately 2,900 linear feet between Honeydale Street and North Goria Street. We have 60 foot of right-of-way throughout the whole roadway, and we will also be proposing the typical sidewalk layout, which includes a 5-foot sidewalk on one side and a 10-foot shared path on the other. The proposed typical roadway section will include a 36-foot back-to-back, 2 12-foot travel lanes with 4-foot shoulders on both sides, as well as our typical sidewalk layouts. The proposed roadway that will be intersecting Central will have a 36-foot back-to-back, 2 10-foot travel lanes, as well as 1 12-foot turning lane, as well as our typical sidewalk layouts. If there are any questions for Wild Rose.
I have a question. If you go back to the picture, the overhead.
Yes.
I'm not sure of the spatial arrangement, but is there a way to connect the far left to the West Rail Trail, or is it too far away? Too far?
If we don't have the image where the begin point of the project, right at the turn, we have a ditch there. And that's part of the proposal is to connect the trail from there to the West Rail Trail
Excellent. Okay.
along the ditch.
That'd be great, because then you could come off the West Rail Trail, go to the library, go to Veterans Park.
On a lot of these cross sections that you see the 10-foot trails, those are on our trail master plan, these are the connectors that'll lead up to our larger trails. That's why you're seeing so many 10-foot sidewalks. That was one of the things I was going to mention at the end, but I'll go ahead and mention it now since you brought that up. I just want to make sure that the public understands that our typical sidewalk is 5 feet. But on these areas, we're seeing on the major thoroughfares, the 10-foot sidewalk, because it'll hopefully lead more traffic to our trails.
Excellent, thank you.
Moving on to our final roadway, we have Old Highway 77. This road spans approximately 7,100 linear feet between Morrison Road and Ruben M. Torres Boulevard. We have 60 foot of right-of-way, and as we head toward to Ruben M. Torres Boulevard, we are increasing right-of-way to approximately 120 feet at the very end. And we will also be proposing the typical sidewalk layouts throughout the whole road, which includes the 5 foot of sidewalk and 10 foot of shared path. Going to our first section, we see 36 feet back-to-back with 2 12-foot travel lanes, as well as 4 foot of shoulder on each side, and including the typical sidewalk layouts. Onto our connection towards Ruben Torres, we have an 80-foot back-to-back, 5 lanes, 4 of them being 12-foot, 2 lanes for each side, as well as a 14 left turn lane. And then on the side with the 10-foot shared path, we see a 10-foot shoulder. And on the side of our 5-foot sidewalk, we see a 4-foot shoulder. If there are any questions.
Dodo, what side is 10-foot sidewalk on? Is that on the hotel side?
We're likely, on this one, that's what we're intending to do, okay? On the business side is to have the 10-foot trail. This is probably the most complex out of all the projects for the sidewalk because of the limited right-of-way that we have. So once we complete our final survey and know exactly where, we may run into some utility conflicts from Morrison Road down to about where the ditch is at. That's really the only area that we may have some changes because there's some utility poles along that section of right-of-way that are right in the middle between the edge of the property and the edge of the road. But
Yeah,
other
well-
than that, that's the intent.
Because you do have those hotels on that side, hopefully you can do the 10-foot on that side. I think it's just be a lot more traffic on that side.
Definitely.
Thank you, Dodo.
And those are all the cross sections that we have today.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Next item, we have presentations, airport finance and project update.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and Commissioners. Bryant Walker with the Airport Department, and I have Stephen Muse with me, Accountant God. So we just wanted to go over our projects real quick. It's been a while since we've been here. We've got a few higher level projects we wanted to review first, and then we'll go over some the finances, the grant awards that we have, and we'll talk about self-sustainability. So the first slide here is going to be just the list of the main projects we have going on. The parking lot expansion, that's actually on the agenda tonight for award. So we can look into that. Janitorial services contract, right now that's pending the bid review, and then we'll bring it back for award as well. Just basically a renewal of the services. An aircraft rescue and firefighting truck. It's a replacement for a vehicle that was purchased in 2014. I believe 2000, is that right? So it's past its useful life, and the maintenance is too high. So anyway, we've posted that. We did a pre-bid meeting this morning. It should be closed on the 17th, and then we'll bring that back. And you can see associated with each heading, you can see the funding source. So we're using different types of funding for almost everything. First, the parking lots, it's funded by bonds, and then operating funds are covering the janitorial. Our ARPA funds are covering the firefighting truck. And then we have a new incinerator that we're going to be, we've already ordered that. It's being assembled right now. It's being manufactured. So we're expecting delivery on that by January 2023. We're doing that in partnership with GBIC. Then we have the restaurant build out, the construction of the restaurant right now. It was supposed to be done by this month. It looks like supply chains are delaying it. It's being pushed towards the middle of December for completion. And that should line up with the concession lease concession management RFP, which is currently it's in procurement. It was sent there recently, and we're just doing a quick review between us and we included 2 other departments in that, so it would be a little bit more appealing for anybody out there. Those are the projects we have. Do you have any questions on any of those? Okay, we'll go on to I'm going to introduce Stephen Muse here, who's going to talk about our grants.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and Commissioners. I'm just going to go over briefly the federally funded projects that we have. For the past 3 years, we've had about 15.6 million in grant awards. If you look on the left, the donut chart, on the outer ring, you see the amount awarded per year, and then on the inner ring, you see the corresponding project. So in 2020, we had 8.7 million, and most of that went to the apron reconstruction. In 2021, 5.3 million, a couple operating grants, CRISA and ARPA funds, and then the runway 1836 design project. And then in 22, just 1.6 million for jet bridge reimbursement. And on the right side, if you look at the Pac-Man looking pie graph, the major project there is the runway reconstruction. So we're wrapping up the runway design, and we're getting ready to kick off that one. And that is based on a 2020 pavement condition study. It is the airport's secondary runway, and there's no changes in dimensions. It's just a straight up reconstruction of the runway. And we have some smaller projects as well. They're on the right side. The safety analysis, the ARF truck, airfield signage, and perimeter roads. This image here shows the runway we're talking about, highlighted in orange from left to right. That's the one that'll be completely reconstructed. This next slide shows the apron reconstruction project, kind of a before and after. On the left is kind of the work that was done, and then you see the finished product on the right. Here, we kind of want to show our operating income, excluding operating transfers and grants. As you can see, there is a shortfall. It's an upside-down bar graph that shows, you know, our shortfall in revenues. We're not breaking even, right? And it's been that way for the past 25, 26 years, and we've relied on the city to cover that deficit there. But as you can see, since 2018, we've made substantial strides in closing that gap. In 2021, we did have a little bump there, a little increase again, but that was due to shifting from the old terminal to the new terminal. Some extra expenses there and loss of revenues because we had, like, the parking was closed. And in 2022, we're still a little bit short, about 500,000 short. But looking at this next slide, we're not using city funds to cover that deficit. We are using CRISA and ARPA grants that I previously mentioned. They're helping us break even, and we'll be doing that through 2025. And in 2026, we'll have developed and grown some additional revenue sources, and we should be completely self-sufficient without any city funds or grants to break even. Speaking of the revenues, the upcoming revenues we have are the restaurant revenue. That's almost done. The parking lot expansion, we're doubling the size of that. Terminal advertising, we're switching from, in the old terminal, we had static displays, posters. We're switching to digital advertising where you can fit multiple advertising partners in the same spot and even show commercials. And we're looking at additional airlines, additional tenants, inspect building development, and also microgrid development, which would help in cutting utility costs for the airport, which would be a big win for us. And we also have some potential cost reductions that are going to go a long way in helping us. The alignment of the master plan with public safety service level study recommendations, that coincides well with the airport's needs. It's going to help us a lot. And we're also looking at replacing contracts, contracted services with skilled staff to save money in that area. The last slide I want to go over is there's a economic impact study by Texas A&M, sponsored by TxDOT, and it kind of looks at the impact from terminal activity, which is all the tenants in the terminal, construction projects that are grant funded, general aviation, we call them FBOs, and commercial service visitor activity, and then even the impact from the tenants that lease land from the airport. So all of that combined creates a total of over 1,300 jobs and a total economic impact of $175 million. So we've partnered with JBIC and BCIC in the past, and we think this shows a good return on investment for them, and we're looking forward to future partnerships with them. That's the end of our presentation. Is there any questions for us?
I do have a couple. First, there was a mention of advertising on there. I know that we approved that. It's been a while. I think we approved that, or we last discussed that when we were still meeting at the library. So terminal advertising, what's the status of that? I know we had invested in some displays.
So where we're at on that is everything's been installed except there's one video wall that's left, and we've had some structural issues with the wall that it was designated for. So we're going to go ahead and accept the project, and it's as complete as it can be without this one video wall. We'll do something else with that, but we can go ahead and get that started. Advertising and selling probably within 2 weeks is what I expect. We're also updating the software that's in the system. Right now, it allows for people to attempt to connect with Bluetooth to the system, and then it just pops up a little error message. Nobody can actually connect, but it does tell us that they can't. So we need to resolve that with the software update. As soon as that's done, we'll be advertising. So that's why I say about 2 weeks. So it's
You
ready to
have
go.
customers for advertising?
Yeah, so all of our previous clients that we had with backlit displays, they've been contacting us, and we've been staying in touch with them the whole time that we didn't have any advertising, and they're looking forward to advertising there. So we'll start with those advertisers, but we can offer, like Stephen was saying, we can offer different products. We can offer dynamic videos, commercials, and we can also rotate them out. So instead of each display having one customer, we can actually put multiple on there. And we can also time it for the time of day. So during flights versus, time between flights, they'll have different rate structures. So a bunch of different products we'll be able to offer, vastly different from the old system.
Then the second part of my question was on contracted services. I know you discussed bringing some in-house on the bottom right there. What contracts are outsourced at this time?
Well, this is, right now, we contract out quite a few different things. The air service, we contract out consulting, engineering services, a lot of our own calls. We also contract out any land acquisition services. We have a few land acquisition projects that are going to be upcoming, and we feel like we can do that either in-house with our own personnel or with other city departments and services. So we just want to make sure that we support them so we can actually reallocate the funds that we're using for some of those consulting services or, other services to dedicate it to staff and get them trained, whether they're in our department or not.
Thank you.
You bet.
Any other questions from?
I do.
Sure, go ahead.
A previous slide where they show how much it's been costing every year. That one. Yes, that one. Oh, no, sorry, that one. How do other airports, say like Harlingen, McAllen, that have more airlines or more flights per day, does the city, how heavily is it subsidized by the city, the airport?
So they're not subsidized by the city. So some airports, like the Brownsville Airport, they found themselves in a sort of a negative revenue situation, and it's hard to get out of that condition. So they haven't been like that. For instance, one of the airports that you mentioned has a substantial amount of more cargo, and that makes up the revenues that we don't have to be able to make sure that they're self-sufficient. And the other one has more mainline service, where we have more regional service. So they make more revenues as well, enough to cover their expenses. We run essentially the same type of operation that both of those airports run, but we don't have the mainline service and we don't have the cargo. So we've been working since, as you can see on here, we just went back 5 years, but we've been working, and you can see the trend, how it's the dependence on the transfer from the city has been reduced year over year. And then we're properly managing all of the finances, including operational grants from the DOT or the FAA. And we're able to get into a positive situation where we don't need any transfer from the city, and we're projecting that moving forward.
Okay, so but that's projections for the future. How long do you anticipate until you get there where you're self-sufficient?
I'm sorry, can you ask it again?
That's projections on how you can grow the mix to be able to be self-sustaining. But how long do you think it would take to get there?
How long will it take?
Uh-huh.
We're actually being very conservative with this. So all these bar graphs here in yellow, these are how we're managing the finances with the grants that we have. And so we're showing that if we do it correctly, that we'll be, and we're not, if you look at the scale on the side, we're less than 100,000 to the positive. So we're not saying we're making millions of dollars or anything like that, but we're just trying to be more responsible with how we've managed the finances. So with the grants, they get us through 2025. By 2025, we will have built the marketing that we were talking about. We will have built the parking lot revenue as well as restaurant revenue we expect by then. So we're not anticipating additional revenues tomorrow or next year. We're not going to count on them until 2026. So if we didn't get any additional revenues until then, we wouldn't need it until then. So any additional revenues would just be surpluses that we would put into the airport construction fund or something like of that nature.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Next item, we have LGBTQ Task Force Annual Update.
Good evening, Mayor and City Commissioners. Tonight we have Brian L. Martinez, who's the chair of the task force, presenting this annual presentation. Thank you.
Just you, Brian?
Yes.
All right, welcome, thank you.
Thank you, Marina. Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. My name is Brian Martinez. I am the chair of the LGBTQ plus task force. It's a pleasure to be here once again with you. This is our third annual update. We came before you in 2020, 2021, and now 2022. Before I begin my presentation, I just want to express the gratitude that the task force has for the city of Brownsville for all of the support of all of our efforts, our endeavors. For the last 3 years, we have been in the spotlight multiple times, and we have continued to show not just the South Texas, but Texas as a whole, that we as a city are leading a lot of these efforts for inclusivity and diversity for municipalities. This cannot be done alone. The task force consists of 7 members when it was created in December of 2019. I'd like to recognize Cesar Villarreal, Leo Zuniga, Sean Kelly, Nolan Fish Navarro, Norma Rodriguez, and Angel Rodriguez, in addition to past members, which include Jose Colon Uvalles, Christopher Gallegos, Albert Hinojosa, and Berenice Marquez. All of these individuals have had their hand and have been part of this whole movement with the LGBTQ in Brownsville, and I believe that they deserve all the recognition that they should. In addition to also past members, which includes one of our current commissioners, which is Commissioner Roy de los Santos. He has been a great support for the task force, both on the task force and after he was elected. Next slide, please. Our purpose was to explore strategies for improving awareness, advocacy, policy, inclusivity, and cultural competency on issues that impact the LGBTQ plus people in the city of Brownsville. For the past 3 years, we have been meeting monthly, every third Thursday at 6 p.m. We are proud that we have been one of the most active boards in the city of Brownsville. We are all trained and have abided by all of the requirements that it takes to be on boards, and we are very proud of that, to demonstrate that we are we are serious about the work that we do, and we want to continue to do that moving forward. Next slide, please. The task force, since its creation, has established a great presence, not just in the city of Brownsville, but in Texas, like I mentioned. We have been an outlet for community members and residents to reach out and share with us things that happen in the community. This data that we collect allows us to demonstrate to you all that the work that we're doing is affecting and impacting these communities, where we are able to either react to it, respond to it, or lead them, guide them to other resources that may be able to help them in the community. But most importantly, it's important that these individuals, these residents, come out and share these things with us, because if they don't, we don't know what's going on in the community. So I think that's a very important thing that the task force has been doing. Next slide, please. Next one. So the task force this year was very busy. For the first time, we had, I believe, over 18 Pride events happening just within the city of Brownsville alone. That has never happened in the city. We have continued to grow our current events, which are our annual events that we have done for the past 3 years. Every single year, these events have grown and have gotten more attention from the community, more participation, and more recognition for us to be able to do the work that we have been doing. One of our most prominent ones is the Pride flag raising. This is very near and dear to my heart, because for 3 years we have been raising this Pride flag at the CVB, and as we raise it, people show up, but most importantly, even after, people go out there, take pictures, share their own stories, and say, I would have never imagined my hometown to be this inclusive and to be a place that I want to come back to. And that, to me, is a win in our books, because we have always wanted to keep our people here, and this is one of the ways that we are able to do so. We had a great turnout. We want to also highlight that the Brownsville Police Department was out here this year in support of also the Pride flag raising, and that was also we're very grateful for them to be out there supporting us as well. Next slide, please. We also had the second annual Show Your Pride at Farmers Market. This is our partnership with the Brownsville Wellness Coalition. A lot of the vendors that participate in these farmers market express that whenever we have these Pride events, they sell a lot of their merchandise. They have a very great impact. And so that, I think, also goes to show the efforts that this task force has done, the economic impact it has made, not just with the farmers market, but with other events that we pop up with. We always collaborate. We always acknowledge that it takes a village to get things done. And so when we are able to incorporate the city, the residents, the businesses, we all as a city win, and we are able to all prosper from it. Next slide, please. One of my best memories from this year was the Pride exhibit that we had at the Brownsville Performing Arts Academy, the Brownsville George Ramirez Performing Arts Academy. This was in partnership with Roca, and they were very gracious to open up their doors. This exhibit featured a lot of history, LGBTQ plus history and icons from Brownsville, Texas. A lot of individuals didn't know that we had a lot of history here in Brownsville. And so if you go to the next slide, please, you'll see that a lot of these individuals like Fish Feroci, who's actually on the task force as well, Catherine York, Canela del Caribe, they have won state championships. They have gone out on a national level and represented Brownsville. They have never been featured before. They had never been recognized. And so for us to do something as a task force, being part of the city of Brownsville, it was a great platform for us to be able to utilize to promote inclusivity, to promote diversity, but also recognize these individuals who have been here way before the task force, who have been doing work way before any of us had started to do any of these things. So it was a great event we're looking forward to next year as well. Because we have a platform with the city of Brownsville, every month we dedicated the first 15 minutes of our meetings to community groups and individuals to come out and share resources, share ways that we can help the community. Some of the organizations you see on the screen were part of this year's meetings. One of the things I wanted to highlight was that we, as a task force, also collaborated with the City of Brownsville Health Department regarding COVID-19 and monkeypox that directly impacted the LGBTQ community. I think having these kinds of collaborations, it goes a long way because we don't know everything, and we have to acknowledge that sometimes. And when we're able to bring experts that are knowledgeable in that area, we are able to make better, concise decisions. And I think that's what happened exactly with these endeavors with the monkeypox and COVID. Next slide, please. So one of our crown achievements for the LGBTQ this year, the task force, was the Chapter 56 Fair Practices Ordinance. This was almost 3 years in the making. A lot of work went into it. We are very proud that on September 16th, this body, the City of Brownsville Commission, unanimously adopted Chapter 56 Fair Practices Ordinance, which is the most comprehensive non-discrimination language south of Austin, Texas. This was created by the task force and Commissioner Roy de los Santos in partnership with the City Attorney's Office, as well as local, state, and national partners. We wanted to get it right. It could not have been rushed, and so we waited until we had thumbs up from everybody who was at the table, that we were all in agreement that we were ready to present this, and very grateful that it did pass unanimously. This specific ordinance offers protections against discrimination due to race, color, religion, gender or familial status, national origin, age, disability, sexual orientation, or gender identity or expression, the areas of employment, housing, and public accommodation. It's a mouthful, but it is protection across the spectrum. And I think that it's important that as we continue to work as a task force, this kind of law that goes into place allows us to really be accredited, if you will, if it really bring the tone to other cities and municipalities who have been trying to do this in the past. Houston, Texas attempted to do this in the past, and they were not very successful in doing so. So we're very proud to have been one of the few cities in the state of Texas who has something of this nature here. Because of this, we have been approached by a lot of media outlets. We have gotten a lot of media attention on this, in addition to being approached by individuals and other municipalities in the state of Texas who want to follow suit of what Brownsville did. We are very proud of that, and we want to continue to work with the city to be able to do more work for the LGBTQ community. Next slide, please. So it would be 3 years since the creation of the task force in December of 2019. This is our third annual report. We have come before you with community engagement and feedback data that we collect, that we're created to do, was provide all of these suggestions, recommendations to you all. We continue to be the leader in the RGV for LGBTQ plus inclusivity, and in South Texas for equality and non-discrimination. When we talk about the city growing and the city, just like, for example, being one of the safest cities in the nation, how we're able to really capitalize on that to attract other residents, other businesses, things of that nature. This too is an attraction where DEI comes into place, diversity, equality, and inclusion. A lot of individuals, a lot of families look into this, and when they want to move somewhere, they want to move somewhere where it's going to be safe, but it's also going to be inclusive and welcoming. And that's exactly where we are leading as a city. We are leading in the direction where we are able to promote all of that. Next slide, please. The recommendation today is to evolve the task force from exploring strategies to implementing strategies. Some of the things that we have mentioned to you in the past 2 years have come up, and we have now starting to formalize and work with the city and what's the best way that we can approach this. There is no rule book to this, so it's not the easiest thing, but we know that we have a great team behind us. Staff has been very helpful in exchanging dialogue with us and what best practices we can take. So with this, we want to be able to work also with the city manager's office and serve with them or their designee as an LGBTQ liaison or ambassadors, if you will, for the city of Brownsville. This means that whenever we have any things that come up that involve the LGBTQ plus, that the task force will be involved and will serve as ambassadors to be able to represent the city of Brownsville to its best of its ability. But to also continue to grow Brownsville's role as an inclusive leader in South Texas. I can't share which municipalities yet have approached us, but they are some that are very local and close to our home. And so once we have something of that nature, we want to continue to be the leader in RGV to be able to promote all of these things. One of the things I wanted to highlight is that the Brownsville has year after year increased their MEI score. If you go to the next slide, please. If you're not familiar, MEI stands for Municipal Equality Index. This is from the Human Rights Campaign. This is one of the ways that they rate municipalities based on laws, policies, services for LGBTQ plus people in the city. This is nationwide. And so this score is very important to the city of Brownsville because, again, it scores and allows for people not just locally but nationwide to look at us and see that we are inclusive and that all of the scores continue to increase on there. If you see from 2018 and 2019, we had a score of 15. We are now at 46%. That was 2021 score. I know one of the highest scores down here is Corpus Christi, which they have a 57, which is 9 points behind us. I do believe that this next year with the Fair Practices Ordinance, we will increase our score. Hopefully we will be passing Corpus Christi, so we will be the highest rated score in South Texas for the MEI of the Human Rights Campaign. We acknowledge that we don't understand this big machine. So one of the efforts that we want to do as a task force is actually meet with the Human Rights Campaign and see how we can increase our score because we know we have a lot of those points already. We just don't know how they're grading them and things of that nature. So we want to figure out how they're doing that. If we have to submit extra things, I know they have a guidebook that we can go through, but it's important that we're able to sit with them directly and work together to increase our score to make Brownsville more appealing for all. That is going to be one of our biggest endeavors this coming year is increasing that MEI score. It talks about not just having public officials of LGBTQ, but also having leadership in the city. In addition to having appointed individuals in the city to focus specifically on the LGBTQ, I'm confident that the city is already open to working with us on this, and so hopefully at our next update we'll have greater news to share with you all that we were able to pass that. And I believe that's the last slide. Do we have any questions?
Just a comment from my end. Fantastic job that you guys are doing, and I'm proud to share with the commission that when I attended the Texas Municipal League Conference recently, I was in contact with the office of Councilman Jalen McKee Rodriguez from San Antonio, and their office is working on something very similar as far as the ordinance goes, and they're looking at Brownsville now for what we've accomplished down here. Very proud to be a model for South Texas. Thank you guys for your part in that.
Thank you. And one last thing, we are going to be sharing, because we have gone through this year and there was an immense amount of events, we know what we're going to be going up against in 2023. So we'll be putting out a calendar of events, which includes, for example, we did National Coming Out Day at El Hueso del Fraile. I had a great crowd come out and share stories about how it impacted them and everything. And I think that's important to have those safe spaces also around town where people can go and share and things of that nature. But I'll be sharing that with the city. We're going to try to promote a lot of those more events to be more inclusive with the community. So you'll be seeing that, the calendar events coming up as well. But thank you so much for your time.
I just wanted to say thank you as well for your work. Having sat in this chair for the time that I have, it is a pleasure to see such great progress, especially in the last 3 years. Hard to believe it's been 3 years. And thank you for the presentation. It's very inclusive, very clear and informative for not only us, but the people out there.
Thank you, Commissioner.
I just want to add, again, thank you for all of your work. I know that when we started this, It just, out of thin air, you all got to work so fast. I will say that the mayor and I were the first ones that, brought it to the commissioner. We wanted to find a way that we could somehow include the city and open this conversation of this discrimination that was happening and how we could better protect the community and be more visible to show that we're all united in this effort and that we're an inclusive place. But I do just have to share that of all of the work that I've ever done at the city, it almost moves me to tears when I'm randomly shopping somewhere and a parent comes up to me and thanks me for that initial step that the mayor and I took to make that move to include the city. And I hope other cities can see how important it is to those citizens that feel discriminated against or alone to just have that ear and that place and that spotlight. So thank you for the work you do. And I hope other cities, maybe they don't have to assemble or they can or they don't have support, whatever, but there's always those community members that have to take that role to be the ambassador to the younger generation. And just this world changes so fast and moves so fast. But thank you for the work you do and continue.
Thank you, Commissioner. And it's not just cities. This year, we also had the Cameron County pass the LGBTQ Pride Proclamation during June, the first time in its history. So we're doing something right.
Wonderful.
Thank you all.
Great job. Thanks.
Next item, we have consent agenda items.
Do you have any motions?
I'll move to approve the consent agenda. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes.
Public hearings, first public hearing and action on first reading on ordinance number 2022-1361-C, adopting 2022 City Commission single-member district boundaries.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the commission. This is a first reading and public hearing on adoption of the 2020 City Commission districts. Mr. Rios is here to present. We'll have the short presentation tonight.
Thank you, Commissioners. As you know, after the census, everybody has to redraw their election districts. And I have to compliment the elected officials here because redistricting can be a very contentious process. However, in this case, we went through a give and take process. Everybody had an input and came to an agreement. Can you go to the next slide? All right, here. It's going what? Okay, I just want to go to the next slide, which is this. Press this? Yeah. Okay. I applied the 2020 census to your existing districts and the data showed that you had a deviation of over 60%, which is very unconstitutional. We have a lot of growth in District 3, and a lot of growth in District 4. So the 60% deviation was clearly unconstitutional, and clearly you had to redistrict. Yeah, that's right. I mean, so I with input from the elected officials, I drew a new plan, and in this new plan, we ended up with a 5% deviation, which is clearly constitutional, and it left room for growth in districts 1, 2. Districts 3 and 4, well, actually left room for growth in districts 3 and 4 and equalize the population in all of them, and was consistent with the constitutional requirements and the most significant voting rights redistricting case, Thornburg versus Jingles. So this is a constitutional plan, and I recommend it. First, ma'am. This is a inset of how this is the whole overall plan for your review. And as you can see, the reason we had a deviation is because districts 1 and 2 are kind of locked in the south east part, and districts 3 and 4 in the northwestern part. That's where the growth is occurring. So we made room for continued growth there. and we had to expand districts 1 and 2. Next plan. Yeah, this is a more of a closer view. Yeah, and then I have the individual districts and their maps, small maps that can be provided to you upon request. It's District 1, District 2, District 3 coming up, District 4. And as I mentioned to you, this is work product of a give and take of the elected officials, and I recommend it for adoption. And I'd be happy to answer questions.
Could we back up to, I think it's like 4 slides, to the one where it shows all the colors? I had one concern right here. No, forward one. Right there. On the far left, right by where the key is, it looks like there's a section of yellow sticking out down there. Right here.
Right here.
And then also up above. So
Right by
in-
the river.
Yeah, right by the river. That
Probably
doesn't look
just-
contiguous to
Oh,
District
I see.
4.
Yes, no, I got it.
You've got
Thank you.
2 little sections there right along the river.
Yes, I
That we'll need to clean up.
appreciate that, yeah.
Definitely.
We can clear that up. That's a census block, but unpopulated. It's a GIS thing. Thank you for pointing that out, Commissioner.
Absolutely. Oh, and I saw, I
have
see
good
one
eyes.
more on this same map, on the far right.
Yes, sir.
I see a gray spot there and I don't know if this just isn't a full view. Oh, it's not the full view. Okay, that one looks fine. I'm comparing it to the full view on my screen. I think that one's good.
Yeah, that's contiguous, Commissioner.
Very good.
Thank you again, Mr. Rios, for your work.
Right there.
Thank you.
Do we have any comments or any other questions from the commission? All right, do we have any motions?
Can I just
It's
ask
a
a question?
public-
Can we then use these proposed boundary lines as a way to more equitably distribute resources across the city? Like, and I thought about this more when we were doing the presentation about capital improvement projects. So can we then, for example, the streets that were described, can we then allocate projects according to either money value? Well, yeah, it has to be money.
Yeah, Commissioner, when we look at our work plans, depending on the districts, we do go through that analysis of projects. We also have to consider which, if some are grant funded, so the low and moderate income groups sometimes we're available to have more CDBG grant funding or has certain restrictions tied to those. So we do, during our work plan process, we'll look at the different streets and the different districts to see how that's distributed. We can.
And I do want to comment also on that. This shouldn't just be about equal distribution among the districts. This should be about where the greatest needs are for the citizens of Brownsville. I know before this redistricting happens, no one was clamoring to say, well, District 3 is the largest as far as population goes, so they should get the lion's share of the money. And I also wasn't making that argument. So I think as far as I'm concerned, staff should focus on where are our needs, communicate those to the commission, and that's where our focus should be for the people of Brownsville.
Yeah, and Commissioner Los Santos, I mean, that's a great point. A lot of the information or data that Engineering and Public Works comes from our pavement management index. And so what we do is take that into consideration. What are the condition of the streets? Which ones require reconstruction? Because maybe they're a main arterial and the ones where we can do mill and overlay. I will say that our Engineering and Public Works Department is looking at doing their own reconstruction in-house. That's something depending on the equipment we have. So we may be able to do more with less, I would say. So we will be, whenever we look at our work plans or any type of activities or projects, we will be coming to you and seeking your guidance. And of course, identifying which district is allocated. With funding, we always do that anyway.
Mayor, this is a public hearing.
This is a public hearing. Is there anybody here who wishes to speak on this item?
I'll make the motion to close public hearing.
We have a motion to close. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Do we have any motions on the item?
I'll move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Thank y'all. I know we had a few iterations of this and Mr. Rios, thank you. And of course, Rick and your team, thanks. Sir.
Thank you.
Public hearing number 2, public hearing in action on first reading on ordinance number 2022-1712, approving the Espiritu Santo Public Improvement District Number 1 Service and Assessment Plan.
Mayor and members of the commission, this is a first reading and public hearing on the final step of implementing the Madera Public Improvement District. The Public Improvement District is being created to generate revenue and cover the expenses associated with maintenance of the right-of-ways and irrigation of those right-of-ways as well. Next slide. Here's a map of the Madera project. This PID assessment will cover phase 1 and 2, approximately $300,000 in expenses, and an annual assessment per lot of $962. That we don't have any additional information. We have a representative from Madera here. If you have any additional questions, if not, you can move to the public hearing.
Does anybody have any questions? All right, this is a public hearing. Is there anybody here who wishes to speak on this item? Okay, do I have a motion? Nope.
Close.
We have a motion to close. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? All right, do we have any motions on the item?
Move to approve.
We have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Next item, we have items for individual consideration. Consideration and action to award a contract for the expansion of the airport parking lot for the city of Brownsville, South Padre Island International Airport, to the responsive and responsible vendor, Jimmy Closer and Sons Construction of Mercedes, Texas, for a contract amount of $1,821,680 as budgeted.
Good evening, Mayor and Honorable Mayor and Commissioners. Bryant Walker with the Airport Department again. We are looking to award the construction of the secondary parking lot, which would expand the main parking lot for the amount of $1.821680 million to Jimmy Klossner. We recommend award.
I did have a question, Brian. There was a mention on there on EV infrastructure, which is just chargers. I couldn't tell where that might be. I know
So-
that there was a mention of it.
Yeah, it's just part of the project. So the chargers were actually a sticking point. We advertised, I think, 3 times and didn't get bids back because they were concerned. We got feedback that they were concerned they couldn't get the charging units. So we took the charging units out of the actual project and put in the infrastructure so that we can, purchase those, wait on them to show up, and then just have them installed. But it does improve the wayfinding, the entrance and exit lanes, as well as the EV chargers.
Okay. Any questions or comments?
Here's all the, if you want to see all the
I already looked at it.
estimate and all of the bid tab.
We have any motions?
I'll make the motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
I look forward to seeing the chargers out there.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Item number 2, consideration and action to award a contract for public funds depository services for the city of Brownsville, FDS-98-0922, tabled on October 18 and October 24, 2022.
Good evening, Mayor and Commission. In the last presentation, what we wanted to do is obtain your feedback and then possibly have, in terms of a path forward, we looked at different alternatives. And so in working with the city attorney's office, we came to a recommendation that we can reject proposals and reinitiate an RFP process with new criteria. For example, we would go ahead and after obtaining your feedback, we would come back to you and bring you evaluation criteria based on your feedback. And then once you approve that evaluation criteria, then go out for the bids again, an RFP process, score them internally, and then return to you with all the scores and all the evaluation criteria so that you can award a contract. And so that's what we think that a way in terms to obtain your feedback, change the evaluation criteria, and then get us on the path of approving an RFP.
Okay. So then, in order to do this, you need some sort of motion to reject the proposals?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you have any motion?
And, well, this is a tabled item, so just remove it from the table.
Move to untable the item. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Do we have any motions on the item?
I'll move to reject all the proposals and start over.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
There was a
We
second.
have a
over
motion and a second from Commissioner
there.
Carlos.
Just one question.
Sure.
And this is for council. Based on the way the agenda item read, I just want to make sure we're okay to make a motion to reject.
Yes, you're okay with that?
Very good.
Any other discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? All right. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you. Next item, we have board appointments, consideration and action on resolution number 2022-077 to appoint members to the Charter Review Committee.
Commissioner De Los Santos,
I'll name Tomas Tijerina.
we have a motion for Tomas Tijerina. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second.
Mayor, may I just add a clarification? I know at the last meeting, there was some talk about the different criteria that, and charges that were included in the resolution. I just want to make clear that the commission is still okay with that, the CRC operating under TOMA, that there would be a report submitted by February 7th, 2023, that the call of election would be by February 17th, 2023. All this considering that the city commission can change that charge at any time if it needs to be extended. And that at least, at least 2 hearings be in different locations of the city to gain public approval. And there was one question about as to whether board members, committee members could serve on 2 different boards. And looking into that, that was, I couldn't find it in ordinance. It was a policy, but it was not included in the resolution itself. So if that is a portion that you'd like to incorporate into that, we can. If not, it can just be read as is. But along with the appointment, I just wanted to kind of get that clarification from the commission.
Okay, thank you, council.
If I could add to that, Mayor, given the nature of the work that we're talking about, and I don't want to see the work rushed, but by the same token, we would like to try and make the May elections of next year. That being the case, I want to make sure we're not absolutely required because of what this board is to follow TOMA strictly in the sense that the quorum must be present in person, are we?
Because you're creating it, you could make that exception.
Okay, because I think I would like to see that exception so that these committee members can meet remotely as much as possible, with, of course, the stream being open to the public for transparency.
Sure, I think that makes sense. Anybody have an issue with that?
Nope.
All right.
With those exceptions and the appointment made by Commissioner De Los Santos, I think we have it.
Yeah, we were in discussion, so those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those
Aye.
opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Next, we have executive session. Mayor, it is now 6:18. Would you like to make a motion to go into executive?
Yes.
So moved.
We have a motion. Is there a
Second.
second? Motion and a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? All right. We're in executive session.
For the record, the commission may consider the following items during executive session. Item number 1, closed session pursuant to Texas Government Code Sections 551.071, consultation with attorney, and Section 551.072, real property related to the potential exchange, lease, valuation, sale, or purchase of real property regarding Project Highway. Item number 2, closed session pursuant to Texas Government Code Sections 551.071, consultation with attorney, and Section 551.072, real property related to the potential exchange, lease, valuation, sale, or purchase of real property. Approximately 1.91 acres, generally located along East South Rio Grande River, north of Power Plant Drive, Brownsville, Texas. Item number 3, closed session pursuant to Texas Government Code, Sections 551.071, consultation with attorney, and Sections 551.072, real property related to potential exchange, lease, valuation, sale, or purchase of real property, approximately 0.27 acres, generally located along South Military Highway west of Weber Road, Los Indios, Texas. Item number 4, closed session pursuant to Texas Government Code, Section 551.071, consultation with attorney, related to legal issues regarding the collective bargaining agreement with the police department. Okay. It is now 7:07. Possible action on any items as discussed in executive session. Item number 1, consideration and action, if any, regarding the granting of an easement to the state of Texas acting by and through the Texas Facilities Commission, a state agency for approximately 1.91 acres, generally located along East South Rio Grande River, north of Power Plant Drive, Brownsville, Texas.
Mayor and Commissioners, based on discussions in executive session, is actually my recommendation that no action is needed for items 1, Project Highway. No action for item number 2, related to the 1.91 acres along east-south Rio Grande River, north of Plant Drive. No action needed for item number 3, related to 0.727 acres along South Military Highway west of Weber Road. And no action related to item number 4, which relates to the collective bargaining agreement with the police department.
Okay, so no action on any of the items? Correct. All right.
So I'll move to adjourn.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. We stand adjourned. Thank you all for coming. Have a good night.
7:08, meeting has ended.